The news came like a bolt of lightning, unexpected and electrifying. Humanity, once considered a fringe species in the grand tapestry of galactic civilizations, had been invited to the Zenith Arms Galactic Weapon Expo. It wasn't just any event. This was where the galaxy's most powerful and advanced species showcased their latest technological innovations in warfare. Attendance was by invitation only, a privilege reserved for civilizations considered advanced enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with the galaxy's elite. For Earth, this was an unprecedented opportunity, one tinged with both excitement and skepticism. Captain Philip Talon sat in the briefing room aboard the TDF Vanguard, a modest yet formidable vessel representing the Terran Defense Forces. The murmurs of his team filled the room as they pored over the details of the invitation. The holographic display projected a rotating image of the Zenith Arms headquarters, a colossal structure orbiting the gas giant Nixora 5. It shimmered like a beacon of technological supremacy, dwarfing anything humanity had built. The message accompanying the invitation was brief, almost dismissive. To the representatives of the Terran Defense Forces, you are hereby granted a presentation slot at the Zenith Arms Galactic Weapon Expo. Your allocated time is 10 minutes. The galactic community eagerly anticipates your contribution. Talon leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. His team's reactions ranged from cautious optimism to outright skepticism. "Captain," said Lieutenant Sofia Alvarez, the team's weapons specialist, her voice tinged with disbelief, "do you think this is for real? Or is it some kind of elaborate joke? They've ignored us for decades, and now, out of nowhere, they want us to present." "It's real," Talon replied, his voice calm but firm. "Whether it's out of pity, curiosity, or a test, it doesn't matter. What matters is how we respond." The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. Humanity had long been the underdog in the galaxy. Though their introduction to the wider universe had been peaceful, it had also been humbling. The advanced civilizations they encountered operated on scales of power and sophistication that rendered Earth's achievements almost laughable. Energy-based weapons, nanotechnology, and AI systems were standard fare among the galactic elite. By comparison, humanity's kinetic weapons and combustion engines seemed like relics of a bygone era. The skepticism from the other species wasn't just expected, it was inevitable. "Let's be honest," said Sergeant Marcus Grayson, the team's grizzled tactician. "They think we're a joke. They're inviting us to laugh at us, not with us." "Then let them laugh," Talon said, his tone sharper now. "We've never fought to earn their approval. We fight to survive. And survival isn't about elegance, it's about results." Those words hung in the air, heavy with conviction. Talon's team knew him well enough to understand what he meant. Humanity's history was one of resilience, adaptation, and ingenuity. For all their technological shortcomings, humans had a knack for turning the tide in impossible situations. This was just another battlefield, albeit a different kind. "All right," Alvarez said, her skepticism giving way to determination. "What's the plan? What are we taking to this circus?" Talon stood and tapped a few buttons on the control panel. The holographic display shifted to reveal a 3D model of the M134 Minigun. The room fell into stunned silence as the team stared at the archaic-looking weapon. "You're kidding," Grayson said, breaking the silence. "We're bringing a minigun?" "Captain, this thing's been around for centuries. The aliens are going to think we're insane." "Let them think what they want," Talon replied, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "This isn't just about the weapon, it's about the message it sends. Every species out there builds weapons for precision, for elegance, for what they call sophistication. But war isn't sophisticated. War is chaos. War is survival. And nothing demonstrates that better than this." The minigun was a relic of Earth's past, a weapon born out of necessity and brutality. With 6 rotating barrels and a firing rate of 3,000 rounds per minute, it wasn't about finesse, it was about overwhelming force. Its design had been refined over the years, its ammunition upgraded for modern warfare, but its core philosophy remained unchanged. When the chips were down, nothing matched the sheer destructive power of a sustained barrage. The team exchanged glances, a mixture of doubt and grim understanding. They knew the minigun wasn't going to win any design awards. It wasn't sleek or futuristic. But it was effective, brutally, undeniably effective. "We've modified the rounds," Talon continued. "Armor-piercing, energy shield destabilizing, heat-resistant. This isn't just an old Earth weapon, it's a statement. And when we demonstrate it, I want the galaxy to understand exactly what humanity is capable of." The team nodded, their doubts slowly giving way to determination. If there was one thing they had learned in their years under Talon's command, it was to trust his instincts. He had led them through countless battles, often against overwhelming odds, and he always found a way to turn the tide. As preparations began, the tension in the room transformed into a quiet resolve. Each member of the team took their role seriously, from ensuring the weapon's performance was flawless to rehearsing the presentation down to the last detail. They knew they only had one chance to make an impression, and they weren't going to waste it. The day of the expo arrived, and the TDF Vanguard docked at the Zenith Arms headquarters. The scale of the station was breathtaking. Massive ships from dozens of species floated in its orbit, their designs as diverse as the creatures that built them. Inside, the expo was a spectacle of light and sound, with holographic displays showcasing the latest advancements in weaponry. Alien delegates in elaborate attire moved through the halls, their expressions ranging from curiosity to disdain as they glanced at the human contingent. Talon and his team walked with purpose, their heads held high despite the sideways glances and whispered comments. They knew they were being judged, but they didn't care. They weren't here to win a popularity contest, they were here to show the galaxy what humanity could do. Their presentation slot was near the end of the schedule, a clear indication of their low standing in the eyes of the organizers. As the hours passed, the other species took the stage, unveiling weapons that seemed like magic compared to humanity's technology. Gravity disruptors, molecular disassemblers, and quantum phase cannons drew thunderous applause. By the time humanity's turn came, the crowd's excitement had waned, replaced by thinly veiled boredom. But Captain Talon wasn't deterred. As he stepped onto the stage, his gaze swept over the audience. The laughter and mockery hadn't started yet, but he could feel it simmering beneath the surface. Let them laugh, he thought to himself. They won't be laughing for long. With a subtle nod to his team, Talon signaled the start of humanity's demonstration. The stage lights dimmed, and the spotlight fell on the minigun. It was time to show the galaxy what survival really looked like. The auditorium was silent for a moment as Captain Talon stood before the crowd, his lean frame casting a long shadow against the spotlight. Behind him, the minigun sat in stark contrast to the sleek and futuristic designs showcased earlier. Its exposed mechanics, rotating barrels, and ammo belt seemed almost crude, primitive even, when compared to the alien marvels that had dazzled the audience. But Talon wasn't here to impress with appearances, he was here to deliver a message. The murmurs began almost immediately, rising like a tide as the alien delegates leaned toward one another, their voices tinged with confusion and disdain. "What is this contraption?" asked a Zendarian general, his mandibles clicking in irritation. His multifaceted eyes reflected a faint shimmer of amusement. "A relic from their primitive past, no doubt," replied a Harkan admiral, neural implants pulsing faintly along her scalp. "Are they here to showcase weapons, or did they misunderstand the invitation?" A correction engineer, his emerald scales catching the light, snorted derisively. "Perhaps it's an art installation? It certainly can't be a serious weapon." Laughter began to ripple through the crowd, hesitant at first, then gaining confidence. The alien spectators, with their air of superiority, couldn't resist mocking what they saw as a crude and outdated design. Talon remained silent, his expression calm and unreadable. He let them laugh. He had seen this before, arrogance born from perceived superiority. It was a mistake humanity's enemies often made, and it was a mistake that often proved fatal. The laughter grew louder as a towering Valdurian warrior stepped forward, his dense exoskeletal armor glinting under the lights. "By the stars, this looks like it belongs in a museum," he bellowed, his voice a deep rumble that echoed through the hall. "Do humans not understand modern warfare? Shields render kinetic weapons useless." Another delegate, a Syrax technician whose crystalline body shimmered with amusement, added, "Perhaps they believe sheer noise will frighten their enemies. Shall we fetch them some fireworks?" Talon stood unmoving, letting the wave of mockery wash over him. His team exchanged glances but said nothing. They had been briefed for this exact scenario, and they trusted their captain implicitly. When the laughter began to die down, Talon finally stepped forward and addressed the crowd. "Gentle beings," he began, his voice calm but carrying a weight that silenced the lingering chuckles. "What you see before you is the M134 Minigun. Its design may seem simple to you. Primitive, even. But I assure you, there is nothing primitive about what it can do." He gestured toward the weapon behind him. "This isn't just a machine. It's a philosophy. A reflection of how humanity approaches war." A Zendarian delegate scoffed loudly. "And what philosophy might that be? Overkill? Crude excess?" Talon's lips curled into a faint smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Precisely. Because sometimes, the only thing that matters in war is ensuring your enemy never gets back up." The murmurs in the crowd shifted, their tone changing from derision to curiosity. Talon could see the subtle flickers of doubt in their expressions. The confidence they had felt moments ago was beginning to falter. "Allow me to demonstrate," Talon said, turning toward his team. "Power it up." The air in the auditorium grew tense as a low hum emanated from the minigun. The motors was soft at first, almost gentle, but it quickly grew into an ominous growl that filled the room. The weapon's barrels began to spin, a mechanical blur of motion that hinted at the fury to come. Talon stepped aside, giving the audience a clear view of the target's downrange. The first row of targets consisted of reinforced steel plates, the standard armor used by many galactic forces. Behind them stood a second row, featuring advanced alloys designed to withstand energy-based weaponry. The final row was protected by shimmering energy shields, the pinnacle of alien defensive technology. The message was clear: humanity's weapon would have to overcome increasingly difficult challenges. Talon raised a hand, his fingers curling around the trigger. He glanced at the audience one last time, his gaze cold and unyielding. "Watch carefully. You might learn something." The trigger clicked, and the minigun roared to life. The sound was deafening, a relentless brrrrt that shook the very walls of the auditorium. The air vibrated with the sheer power of it, and the ground seemed to tremble underfoot. What followed was nothing short of a storm. Bullets poured out of the spinning barrels at a staggering rate of 3,000 rounds per minute, a continuous stream of destruction that defied belief. The first row of targets disintegrated almost instantly. The steel plates, designed to withstand traditional projectiles, crumpled like paper under the onslaught. Sparks flew, and shards of metal scattered across the stage as the minigun tore through them with merciless efficiency. The crowd gasped, their earlier amusement replaced by shock. The weapon's roar didn't falter as it moved to the second row. The advanced alloys held for a fraction of a second longer, but it was futile. The modified rounds, engineered to penetrate even the toughest materials, ripped through the targets with ease. Molten fragments flew in all directions, a testament to the weapon's overwhelming power. By the time the minigun reached the final row, the audience was no longer laughing. The energy shields flickered and shimmered as the bullets struck them. For a moment, it seemed as though they might hold. But the relentless barrage proved too much. The shields destabilized, collapsing in a cascade of light and distortion. The bullets found their mark, obliterating the last line of defense. When the minigun's barrels finally spun down, the silence that followed was deafening. Smoke curled through the air, and the stage was littered with the mangled remains of the targets. The weapon's motor emitted a low hum as it powered down, a stark reminder of the devastation it had unleashed. Talon turned back to the audience, his expression unreadable. "You build shields to endure battles," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. "You design weapons for precision, for elegance. But war isn't elegant. War is chaos. And chaos is what we excel at." The delegates stared at him, their faces a mixture of awe and unease. The laughter was gone, replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence. Talon let the moment stretch, the weight of his words sinking in. "We don't fight to prove a point," he continued. "We fight to survive. And when we fight, we make sure it's over before it begins." With that, he stepped back, letting the minigun speak for itself. The galaxy's laughter had stopped. At 3,000 rounds per minute, it had been obliterated. The silence in the auditorium was thick, charged with the weight of what had just transpired. Smoke curled in lazy tendrils from the stage, carrying the acrid scent of burning metal and gunpowder. The minigun, still faintly glowing from its relentless fury, seemed alive, like a beast that had just finished its hunt. Captain Talon stood beside it, calm and composed, letting the aftermath of destruction speak louder than any words ever could. The alien delegates, who moments ago had been laughing, now sat frozen in their seats. Some leaned forward, their eyes wide with disbelief, while others whispered urgently to their companions, trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. The laughter that had once echoed so confidently through the hall was now a distant memory, drowned out by the relentless symphony of the minigun's fury. A Syrax technician, her crystalline form shimmering uneasily, was the first to break the silence. 3,000 rounds per minute, she murmured, her voice layered with harmonic tones. That defies logic. Such wastefulness. Such chaos. Such power, a VYRNN weapons analyst interjected, his scaled hands clenched into fists. He stared at the smoking remains of the targets with a mix of awe and trepidation. The shields, they didn't just fail. They collapsed. That shouldn't be possible. "It's not just the rate of fire," Talon said, his voice cutting through their murmurs like a blade. He stepped forward, addressing the audience directly. "It's the philosophy behind it. You see waste, we see adaptability. You call it chaos, we call it efficiency." A towering Valdurian warrior, his dense exoskeleton twitching with tension, stood abruptly. "This is not war as we understand it," he rumbled, his deep voice resonating through the hall. "Your weapon does not aim for precision or elegance. It seeks to devour, to overwhelm." Talon inclined his head slightly. "Exactly. You design weapons to match your enemies. We design weapons to ensure they don't get back up." The Valdurian's mandibles twitched, his gaze fixed on the human captain. "A berserker's weapon," he said finally, almost reverently. "It roars not with calculation, but with fury. A feast of destruction." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, a mixture of fascination and unease. The delegates had come expecting to scoff at humanity's backwardness. Instead, they were grappling with the horrifying realization that humans had redefined the very nature of warfare. The minigun wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. A declaration that humanity didn't play by the galaxy's rules. The Harkin Admiral, her neural implants glowing faintly as they processed data, leaned forward. "Your minigun bypasses traditional defenses by sheer volume of fire," she said, her voice tinged with both admiration and disbelief. Even the most advanced energy shields can't dissipate kinetic energy that quickly. How did you calculate this strategy? Talon met her gaze, his expression unreadable. We didn't calculate it. We earned it. Through centuries of conflict, against enemies stronger and more advanced than us. We learned that sometimes, the only way to win is to outlast, outfight, and overwhelm. A Xandarian general clicked his mandibles in frustration. This philosophy of yours is reckless. It ignores balance, precision, and strategy. It's barbaric. Barbaric? Talon repeated, his voice cold. Perhaps. But it's also effective. And effectiveness is the only thing that matters on the battlefield. He gestured toward the shattered remains of the targets. Your shields, your advanced alloys, your energy-based defenses, they're all built to counter weapons like yours. Sophisticated. Elegant. Predictable. But they weren't built to counter us. Because we don't fight fair. We fight to win. The words hung in the air, heavy and unrelenting. The delegates shifted uneasily in their seats, their earlier confidence replaced by a growing sense of doubt. They had always believed that their technology made them untouchable, that their advancements placed them above the primitive chaos of humanity's past. But now, faced with the raw power of the minigun, they weren't so sure. A correction engineer, his emerald scales catching the flickering light, finally spoke. Your weapon, it doesn't just destroy. It annihilates. It leaves nothing behind. Is this truly how humans wage war? Talon's gaze was cold, unwavering. We don't fight for conquest. We fight for survival. And survival doesn't leave room for half measures. When we go to war, we end it. Completely. The room fell silent once more, the weight of his words sinking in. For the first time, the delegates weren't just grappling with the power of the weapon, they were grappling with the philosophy behind it. Humanity didn't just build tools for battle. They built promises. Promises that when they fought to the bitter end. The Syrax technician spoke again, her crystalline tones tinged with unease. And what of mercy? Of restraint? Do you not believe in sparing your enemies? Mercy? Talon's lips curled into a faint, humorless smile. Mercy is a luxury for those who can afford it. We can't. We've faced extinction too many times to leave anything to chance. So, no. We don't fight for mercy. We fight to ensure there's no fight left. The technician's crystalline form dimmed slightly, as if the weight of his words had drained her. Across the room, other delegates exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't the humanity they had expected. They had come to laugh at a primitive species fumbling with outdated tools. Instead, they were confronted with a species that had honed survival into an art form. A species that didn't play by their rules, because they didn't have to. As Talon stepped back, letting the smoke and destruction settle, he knew the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. They hadn't just demonstrated a weapon. They had demonstrated a mindset, a relentless, unyielding drive to survive against all odds. And as the minigun's hum faded into silence, the galaxy began to understand that humanity was no longer a species to underestimate. They were a force to be reckoned with. A storm that could not be stopped. The destruction on stage was absolute, a tableau of shattered armor, destabilized energy shields, and pulverized alloys. Smoke lingered like a spectral reminder of the minigun's wrath, curling in the air as the echoes of its relentless roar faded. But the true storm raged in the minds of the alien delegates. Their initial mockery had transformed into stunned disbelief, and now it settled into something deeper, a gnawing unease. Across the auditorium, the alien representatives grappled with what they had witnessed. The Xandarian general, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the ruined targets, clicked his mandibles in agitation. This level of destruction is unnecessary. Brutal. Inefficient. The Harken Admiral, her neural implants flickering erratically, shook her head. Unnecessary? I disagree. The minigun destabilized energy shields faster than any weapon in the galaxy's history. Efficiency isn't just about precision, it's about results. The Valdurian warrior, still standing, slammed a dense fist against his armored chest in a salute of respect. This weapon speaks to the heart of war. There is no finesse on the battlefield, no elegance. Only survival. And this weapon ensures it. The Syrax technician, crystalline and shimmering with discordant tones, tilted her head as if listening to distant echoes. But there's no balance in it. No restraint. Such a weapon, such a mindset, it's chaos given form. The correction engineer, his emerald scales catching the smoke-filtered light, leaned forward, his voice tinged with reluctant admiration. Chaos, yes. But calculated chaos. This wasn't random destruction. It was a systematic dismantling of defenses. The minigun isn't just a weapon, it's a lesson. What lesson? Demanded the Zendarian general, his mandibles clicking furiously. The correction gestured to the ruined targets. That their philosophy works. They don't waste resources on perfecting a single strike or creating elegant solutions. They overwhelm. They endure. They ensure nothing is left to chance. A murmur spread through the crowd as the delegates digested these words. Humanity's minigun had been a shock, yes, but it was the strategy behind it that truly unsettled them. The galaxy's greatest powers prided themselves on precision, efficiency, and sophistication. Humanity had turned those values on their heads, presenting a weapon that thrived on brute force and relentless firepower. From his position on stage, Captain Talon watched the shifting expressions of the crowd. He saw the Zendarian general's frustration, the Valdurian warrior's admiration, the Harken admiral's calculated curiosity. They were beginning to understand, though they would never admit it aloud. Finally, the Zyron strategist, a long-limbed creature with a segmented body and luminous eyes, broke the silence. His voice was slow and deliberate, each word carrying the weight of analysis. Their strategy is clear. Shields mean nothing. Cover means nothing. This device eliminates the need for precision entirely. It does not seek to adapt to the battlefield. It seeks to turn the battlefield into ash. Talon stepped forward, his boots echoing on the stage. His calm, composed demeanor had an unsettling effect on the already uneasy audience. You're beginning to understand, he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. You build weapons for balanced engagements. We build them to end wars. The Zyron segmented fingers drummed against the armrest of his seat. But this approach, it is unsustainable. The resources alone. Talon interrupted, his tone sharp. Resources? You misunderstand us. Humanity has faced extinction countless times. We've fought wars on our homeworld where resources were scarce, where survival meant adapting to circumstances no matter how desperate. We don't waste time or energy on theoretical perfection. We aim for what works. And what works is ensuring the enemy never has the chance to fire back. A ripple of unease spread through the crowd. The delegates had never encountered a species with such a starkly pragmatic view of warfare. Most galactic powers viewed war as a tool for conquest, a way to expand influence while maintaining balance. Humanity viewed war as a means to an end that left nothing standing. The Harken admiral leaned forward, her neural implants pulsing faintly. And what of mercy? Of restraint? Do you not fear becoming the monsters you fight? Talon's gaze locked onto hers, cold and unyielding. Monsters? No. We fight because we have to, not because we want to. We've learned the hard way that mercy on the battlefield often leads to tragedy later. When we fight to survive. And survival doesn't leave room for mercy. The Valdurian warrior nodded approvingly. Spoken like a true soldier. Mercy has no place in war. Only victory does. Not all the delegates agreed. The Syrax technicians' crystalline tones took on an edge of discomfort. And what happens when your philosophy turns against you? What happens when the chaos you embrace consumes you? Talon's lips curled into a faint, humorless smile. We've faced chaos before. We've been forged by it. And every time, we've come out stronger. You build weapons to fit your enemies. We build them to fit the reality of war. The room fell silent again, the weight of his words pressing down on the delegates. For all their advanced technology and sophistication, they realized that they had underestimated humanity. The minigun wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol of a mindset they had never encountered before. A mindset that didn't seek balance or elegance but thrived on adaptability, resilience, and overwhelming force. As Talon turned back to his team, he knew the seeds of doubt had been planted. The galaxy was beginning to question its assumptions about humanity. The minigun had done more than destroy targets, it had shattered preconceptions, leaving the delegates grappling with a new reality. The galaxy wasn't ready for humanity. But humanity was ready for the galaxy. And this was just the beginning. The tension in the room hung like a heavy fog. The alien delegates, who had entered the auditorium with smug confidence, now sat subdued, their expressions ranging from wary respect to outright fear. The minigun's demonstration had been more than a display of firepower, it was a declaration of intent. Humanity's philosophy of war had been laid bare, and it was as alien to them as any distant star. Captain Talon stood at the edge of the stage, his posture calm and composed, yet his presence radiated an unspoken challenge. He could see it in their eyes, the galaxy's greatest powers were trying to reconcile the raw brutality they had just witnessed with their understanding of what warfare should be. The Xandarian general broke the silence, his voice sharp and accusatory. This minigun of yours is nothing more than brute force. Where is the precision? The strategy? Do you truly believe this barbaric weapon represents the pinnacle of your capabilities? Talon turned to face him, his gaze steady. No, he said simply. The minigun isn't the pinnacle of our capabilities. It's a tool, a reminder of what happens when survival is at stake. When the odds are against us, and everything is on the line, elegance and precision become luxuries we can't afford. The general bristled, his mandibles clicking in irritation. That is no way to fight a war. War requires discipline, balance, and calculated tactics. Your approach, your weapon, is chaos incarnate. Exactly, Talon said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. War is chaos. You try to control it with your balance and calculations. But chaos can't be controlled. It can only be met head-on. That's what we've learned. That's how we've survived. A murmur of agreement rippled through the human contingent standing behind him. The delegates exchanged uneasy glances. They couldn't deny the results they had witnessed. The minigun hadn't just destroyed targets, it had obliterated the very concept of defensive superiority. The Harkan admiral leaned forward, her neural implants pulsing faintly as she processed her thoughts. You've made your point about brute force. But tell me, Captain Talon, what happens when brute force isn't enough? When the enemy adapts? When precision and strategy are the only paths to victory? Talon met her gaze, his expression unreadable. You're assuming we don't adapt, he said. But adaptability is at the core of who we are. Every time we've faced an enemy stronger than us, more advanced than us, we've found a way to win. Not because we had better technology, but because we had the will to keep going. To learn, to innovate, to turn the enemy's strengths into weaknesses. The correction engineer, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Your approach relies on overwhelming firepower. But such tactics must be resource-intensive. How do you sustain this level of destruction in prolonged conflicts? Talon smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried no warmth. Prolonged conflicts? We don't fight to prolong anything. We fight to end wars quickly and decisively. You think our philosophy is about excess, but it's not. It's about efficiency. Every bullet, every shot, is a guarantee that the fight ends here and now. The Valdurian warrior rumbled his approval, his voice resonating through the hall. This is war as it should be. No games, no pretense, only victory. I see the wisdom in your methods, Captain. Not all the delegates agreed. The Syrax technician, shimmering uneasily, shook her head. And what of the consequences? What happens to a species that embraces annihilation as a strategy? How do you reconcile this philosophy with peace? Talon's gaze softened slightly, his voice quieter now but no less firm. Peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of security. We don't fight for conquest. We fight so we can live without fear. So we can ensure that the next generation doesn't have to fight the same battles. If that means embracing destruction to achieve peace, then so be it. The Syrax technician's crystalline tones wavered with uncertainty. And yet, destruction breeds fear. Fear breeds retaliation. Can you truly break the cycle with such methods? Talon stepped forward, his boots echoing on the stage. We don't seek to break the cycle, we seek to survive it. Every civilization here has its own way of waging war. Ours is born from necessity, not ambition. We're not asking you to understand it. We're asking you to recognize it. The Xiron strategist, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. His segmented fingers tapped rhythmically against his armrest, his luminous eyes narrowing thoughtfully. And yet, Captain, your philosophy hinges on one assumption, that your enemies will not match your brutality. What happens when they do? When another species adopts your approach? Talon's expression hardened. Then they'll learn what we've learned, that war doesn't care about balance or fairness. And if they want to face us on those terms, they'll find out just how far we're willing to go. The room fell silent again, the weight of his words pressing down on the delegates. The Xiron nodded slowly, his luminous eyes reflecting the minigun's still smoking barrels. You are a dangerous species, Captain. Not because of your weapons, but because of your will. It is unsettling. Talon offered no response, letting the observation hang in the air. He didn't need to argue the point. The delegates had already seen enough to understand. As the murmurs resumed, Talon turned back to his team, signaling the end of the presentation. The minigun was powered down, its glow fading as the humans prepared to leave the stage. But the impact of their demonstration lingered. The galaxy's greatest powers had come to mock humanity, to dismiss them as a primitive and inconsequential species. Instead, they had been forced to confront a terrifying truth: humanity's strength wasn't in their technology, it was in their resilience, their adaptability, and their unwavering will to survive. And as Captain Talon and his team exited the stage, the delegates were left to grapple with a chilling realization: humanity wasn't just another species. They were a force of nature. A storm that couldn't be ignored. The reverberations of the minigun's demonstration continued to ripple through the Zenith Arms Galactic Weapon Expo, leaving a stunned silence that seemed to linger in the air. Alien delegates, once dismissive, now found themselves questioning their assumptions about humanity. Captain Talon had said little after the demonstration, but his presence alone carried the weight of something far greater, a warning that could not be ignored. As Talon and his team stepped off the stage, a representative of the event's organizers, a slender, blue-skinned Alarax with intricate bioluminescent patterns glowing faintly on his body, approached them. His voice was calm, yet there was an unmistakable edge of nervousness. Captain Talon, might I have a word? Privately? Talon gave a curt nod, gesturing for his team to proceed without him. He followed the Alarax to a small conference room, its walls lined with holographic displays of the galaxy's most advanced weapons. Once the door closed, the Alarax turned to him, his glow intensifying slightly, a sign of heightened emotion. "That was unexpected," the Alarax began, choosing his words carefully. "Your demonstration has certainly captured the attention of the delegates." Talon crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "That was the point." "Yes, but perhaps not in the way you intended." The Alarax hesitated, then continued. "Many here see your minigun as more than a weapon. They see it as a declaration. A challenge, even." Talon's gaze hardened. "It's not a challenge. It's a reminder. A reminder that humanity isn't here to be dismissed or underestimated. We're here to survive. And if anyone thinks they can threaten that survival, they'll learn very quickly how wrong they are." The Alarax's glow dimmed slightly, a subtle signal of discomfort. "You must understand, Captain, the galaxy operates on principles of balance and calculated diplomacy. Your approach, your philosophy, it disrupts those principles. It introduces an unpredictability that many find unsettling." Talon uncrossed his arms and stepped closer, his voice steady but unyielding. "Unpredictable to you, maybe. But not to us. We've spent centuries adapting to chaos, surviving against impossible odds. The galaxy may see us as reckless, but I see it as being prepared for the reality of war." The Alarax sighed, his glow flickering. "Your words are bold, Captain. But boldness often invites retaliation. Surely you must understand the risk of painting humanity as a threat." Talon's eyes narrowed. "If being prepared to defend ourselves makes us a threat, then so be it. We didn't come here to seek approval. We came here to show the galaxy what we're capable of. And if that makes some uncomfortable, maybe they should rethink their assumptions about what it means to be advanced." The Alarax studied him for a long moment, his bioluminescence fluctuating in rhythmic waves. Finally, he nodded, though his expression remained conflicted. "Very well, Captain. But consider this, you've planted a seed today. One that will grow in ways you cannot predict. Whether that seed brings respect or hostility remains to be seen." Talon didn't flinch. "We've faced hostility before. And we've survived it. This won't be any different." Back in the main hall, the alien delegates continued to discuss what they had witnessed, their voices a mix of curiosity, unease, and begrudging respect. The Valdurian warrior stood among a group of his peers, his booming voice cutting through the chatter. "Do you see now?" he declared, gesturing toward the stage where the minigun had left its mark. "These humans do not fight for glory or conquest. They fight to ensure their existence. It is a lesson we could all learn from." The Syrax technician, still shimmering uneasily, shook her head. "A lesson, perhaps. But one that comes at a cost. Their philosophy, this annihilation as a strategy, it is unsustainable. It will turn the galaxy against them. Or, the Harkin Admiral countered, it will force us to reconsider our own approaches to warfare. The humans have shown us that strength isn't just in technology. It's in resolve. In adaptability. In the willingness to do whatever it takes to survive." The Zyron strategist, his luminous eyes glowing faintly, added his voice to the discussion. "It is a warning. Not just to us, but to humanity as well. They tread a fine line between survival and provocation. If they are not careful, they may find themselves facing enemies united by fear." Across the room, Talon rejoined his team, their expressions reflecting a shared understanding of the impact they had made. Lieutenant Alvarez leaned in, her voice low. "They're rattled, Captain. You can see it in their eyes. I think they're starting to get it." Talon nodded, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "They're starting to understand, yes. But whether they respect us or fear us is another matter. Sergeant Grayson, ever the pragmatist, chuckled darkly. Either way, it works in our favor. Fear keeps them from underestimating us again. Talon's expression remained serious. Fear can be a double-edged sword. We've shown them what we're capable of. Now we need to make sure they don't see us as a threat unless they make themselves one. Alvarez frowned. You think they'll try to retaliate? Some might, Talon admitted. But most of them will think twice. They're used to fighting wars with rules, with boundaries. We've shown them that we don't play by their rules. That alone will give them pause. As the humans prepared to leave the expo, the weight of their demonstration settled over the galaxy's representatives. The minigun wasn't just a weapon, it was a message. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were no longer content to be seen as a curiosity. They were survivors, and they would fight to the very end to ensure their place among the stars. But as Captain Talon and his team exited the hall, leaving behind the smoldering remains of their demonstration, one thought lingered in the minds of the alien delegates: what would happen if humanity's warnings were ignored? And more chillingly, what would happen if humanity ever decided to go on the offensive? The seeds of doubt and fear had been sown. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy realized it was no longer dealing with just another species. It was dealing with a force unlike any it had ever encountered. A force that could not be stopped. The Zenith Arms Galactic Weapon Expo had come to its conclusion, yet the echoes of humanity's demonstration reverberated far beyond the auditorium. The alien delegates, once brimming with confidence and derision, now carried the weight of what they had witnessed. The minigun's relentless roar had silenced their laughter, shattered their assumptions, and left them grappling with a new understanding of humanity, a force they could no longer ignore. Captain Talon and his team were back aboard the TDF Vanguard, preparing to depart the orbit of Nixora 5. The ship's bridge was quiet as they reviewed the data collected from their presentation. Talon stood by the observation window, gazing out at the swirling gas giant below, his thoughts heavy but resolute. Lieutenant Alvarez approached, holding a data pad. Captain, the final feedback reports are coming in. Mixed reactions, as expected. Some species are impressed, others, concerned. Talon glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Concern is good. It means they're thinking. Alvarez smirked. That's one way to look at it. The Valdurian warrior sent a message. He called our demonstration a masterpiece of devastation and invited us to spar in their combat trials. Talon raised an eyebrow. Valdurians respect strength. No surprise there. What about the others? Alvarez hesitated, then sighed. The Syrax delegation issued a formal complaint. Called our methods reckless and barbaric. The Zendarians are calling for a discussion on humanity's potential threat level. And the Krektians, well, they're already asking about trade agreements for kinetic weapon designs. Talon allowed a faint smile. Fear, respect, and curiosity. Exactly the response we needed. Grayson, seated at the communications console, leaned back with a grunt. They're scared, Captain. You can see it plain as day. Half of them probably went back to their ships wondering if they've been underestimating us this whole time. Talon turned to face his team, his expression serious. Let them wonder. Let them question. The important thing is that they now know we're not to be dismissed. The minigun wasn't just a demonstration of power, it was a statement about who we are. A reminder that when humanity fights, we fight to win. Alvarez nodded, but her brow furrowed slightly. Do you think they'll see us as a threat, Captain? Enough to push back? Talon's gaze hardened. Some will. But those who truly understand what they saw today will know that humanity isn't looking for conquest or conflict. We're looking for peace, but peace on our terms. If they respect that, there won't be any need for hostility. Back at the expo, the alien delegates remained locked in discussions long after the humans had departed. The Zendarian general, his mandibles twitching with agitation, addressed a group of his peers. We cannot ignore the implications of this demonstration. Humanity's methods are unorthodox, but their effectiveness cannot be denied. They've proven themselves to be a force worth considering. The Harkin Admiral, her neural implants glowing faintly, nodded in agreement. It's not just their weapons. It's their mindset. They don't fight to gain ground or assert dominance. They fight to survive, and that makes them more dangerous than any of us anticipated. The Syrax technician, still uneasy, spoke softly. And if their survival comes at the expense of ours? What then? The Valdurian warrior slammed a fist against his chest plate, his booming voice cutting through the tension. Then they will face us on the battlefield. And I, for one, would welcome the challenge. Humanity has earned my respect. They understand what war truly is: chaos, survival, and strength. We could all learn from their example. The Zyron strategist, his luminous eyes narrowing thoughtfully, tapped his segmented fingers against the table. Respect is one thing. Fear is another. If humanity's philosophy spreads, it could disrupt the balance of power across the galaxy. But perhaps, that balance needs to be disrupted. A silence fell over the group as they considered his words. The galaxy had long operated under assumptions of superiority, crafting weapons of elegance and precision to wage wars that were more about control than survival. Humanity's approach was a stark departure from that norm, a reminder that survival didn't care for balance or decorum, it cared only for results. On the TDF Vanguard, Talon addressed his team in the briefing room. The mood was one of quiet satisfaction mixed with an undercurrent of anticipation. They had achieved their goal, but they all understood that the road ahead would not be easy. This was just the beginning, Talon said, his voice steady and commanding. We've shown them what we're capable of. But now we need to back it up. They'll be watching us more closely than ever, and some will look for any excuse to challenge us. Grayson smirked. Let them try. We've handled worse. Talon's lips twitched in a faint smile. And we'll handle it again, if it comes to that. But remember this, our goal isn't to provoke conflict. It's to ensure that if conflict comes, we're the ones who walk away. Alvarez raised her chin, her voice firm. They won't forget us after this. We've made sure of that. Talon nodded. Good. Let them remember. Let them question. And let them know that humanity isn't just another species. We're survivors. Innovators. Fighters. And when we're pushed, we push back harder than anyone else. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. This galaxy is vast, and we've only begun to explore it. But today, we've made one thing clear: humanity has a place here. And we're not going anywhere. The team stood as one, a quiet resolve passing between them. They had entered the Zenith Arms Galactic Weapon Expo as outsiders, a species dismissed as primitive and inconsequential. But they were leaving as something far more significant, a force that could no longer be ignored. As the TDF Vanguard powered up its engines and prepared to leave Nixora 5's orbit, Captain Talon looked out at the stars beyond. The galaxy was watching now, and humanity's future among the stars had been set in motion. They were no longer the laughingstock of the galactic stage. They were its storm. And storms, once unleashed, could not be contained.